Welcome to Iron Africa on France 24. I'm Fraser Jackson. Here are the stories making headlines this evening. Monday was Gender Day at the COP27 Climate Summit in Egypt, with women in the Global South disproportionately feeling the effects of climate change. We'll ask what can be done to reduce the gender gap. It's good to have you with us. This year's COP27 Climate Summit in Egypt is now in its second week. Delegates are set to discuss a loss and damage fund this week before a vote at the end of the summit. But Monday was Gender Day at COP27. The fact is that women form the majority of the world's 1.9 billion people who live in poverty, and they disproportionately suffer the effects of climate change. International NGO ActionAid recently released a report that states women from rural communities in the Global South are experiencing the worst impacts of the climate crisis, as well as the greatest losses and damages. Susan Otieno is Executive Director for ActionAid International Kenya. I spoke to her a little earlier on and started by asking her how and why women are being disproportionately affected.
And girls are actually disproportionately affected in that with the drought, almost 90% of the open water sources are dried up and they're depleted. And this is seen as more of a gender role, that it's the women, it's the girls who would then ideally be out there looking for water. They have to do long distances and come back home with probably 20 liters of water. We're now seeing girls also being pulled out of school to be able to accompany their parents and also the mothers to go and at least increase on the 20 liters that they are able to come back with. And so these are the increased effects. And also with that, they have to walk long distances, risking violence, attack, rape as they go, and areas that are also close to the wild animals. We've seen women and girls being attacked. And lastly, of course, in a patriarchal society like the societies that are affected, the responsibility to provide is with the men, but you can see there's nothing to bring home. And at the moment you ask for food and you're asking it from a partner who is already going through depression because of loss of livestock, and then you find that through that then there's also domestic violence that occurs, and mostly it's the women who suffer this.
I want to touch on that. If you don't mind. Your organisation ActionAid just released a report saying that women aren't just suffering the direct effects of climate change, but also the indirect effects, like gender-based violence, as you just said. What more can you tell us about that?
Yeah. So the report brought out the soaring prices of food, and with the income that a woman would be able to probably provide for the family, it's no longer happening. And also when you go to the markets are distorted. And the violence is coming in because of the kind of terrain that they have to walk, long distances going to get this water. To some extent, when they find the water, especially when it's commercially being distributed, we've had cases where the distributors are also asking for sex before they can, you can even buy water. So you have money, but you have to trade in your body for you to get the water. And lastly, of course, as I said, their spouses who are going through depression because of loss of livestock. And livestock is a source of dignity for majority of these communities that we are seeing being affected by the drought. So instances where you have to ask for money where there's no money, then it builds into tension. And at the end of it, then you find that women get to suffer violence in the home, domestic violence especially. Yeah.
Susan, what do you think needs to be done to address these issues then? Are they something individual governments need to rectify, or is it a bigger problem than that?
There's a bigger problem. Individual governments, especially governments in the South, have tried, because we know drought would come and within a season it would be back, we would be back having the rains. But because of the prolonged nature of this disaster, you realize that it's really not just the normal occurrence. And when you dig deep, you find that it's truly related to climate change and its impact, and the shocks, the climate shocks and the aftermath that is happening. And so we are actually saying that we have to go deeper to the root causes. and the root cause here being the climate shocks, and the people being affected are the women and girls, then it is important that everyone looks into their responsibility, the causes of the injustices that have happened over and over, that is causing a place like the Horn of Africa to to have 4 failed rain seasons, and we are getting into the 5th one. I mean, the little rain that we got, you cannot count. So it's clearly linked to the damages that are being caused by the climate injustices, and therefore it's beyond the countries. This is a global crisis, and that is why we are actually where we are at the moment with the COP27 saying, listen, the women and the girls are suffering, and the root cause to all this climate injustice.
Susan Otieno speaking to me a little